All right, we are getting started with the April show and tell meeting of the design team. Just waiting for getting people in the channel. Hey, Pal. Hello.
Hi.
How are you doing?
Hello. Good, and you?
I'm doing well. Welcome to the show and tell meeting.
Thank you.
We have a lot of people in the waiting room. Just admit them. Hello. So while everyone settles in, this is a monthly meeting where we pretty much, it's based on the name show and tell. We demonstrate things that is related to design and also WordPress. I'm gonna give a few minutes for our team members to join in. Oh, we have Tammy joining in. Hi, boy.
Hi.
Good to see you. Hey, Tammy.
Yeah.
Hello. Right. So once again, formally welcoming you. Okay, Paul is having some issues with the audio. I'm not sure if Stellaris is around, but it'd be good to have her. I know Paul has something to share with us. We have Jay as well. I just noticed that beautifully published article on the news site for WordPress Figma library. Congratulations to Jay for that. Really well written. I'll share the link if you guys are interested, but I'm sure Jay has a lot to talk about it. I'll share the link just for everyone's sake. It's published, I think, just a few minutes ago. So who wants to go first today? Sean joining us.
I also added one thing to the agenda if we have time.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. So should we start with Jay, or since Paul is still having issue connecting the audio, I think we can go back to him.
Yeah. Oh, I have to choose what to share. I have so much going on. I think Paul has a few things we've been discussing that he's keen to share. So I'm probably going to share something different that I'm working on that we can discuss. I'll preface this by saying it's like an early concept. I don't expect it to actually land anytime soon. But it's inspired by a number of things that are happening in different pull requests in Gutenberg. So if you wouldn't mind enabling screen sharing.
Absolutely. Let me just go ahead and do that. There you go.
Thank you. And let me find my browser. Okay. Oh, sneak peek there. So yeah, the TLDR, I suppose, is that I'm exploring this idea of moving document attributes up into the top bar here. Just make this a bit bigger. Somewhat inspired by one of, I think it's an issue that Paul opened. Let me see if I can find it, about moving this one. Moving the post and page title to the top bar. So this idea of having access to the post title, the post permalink in this little widget in the top bar, inspired by what has been done in the site editor. So that kind of got me thinking, you know, maybe there's other things in this, in the inspector here that we can move as well. So just as a very quick example, pictures normally do better than words here. I'm thinking if you're editing a post, for example, you open this popover, you can immediately edit the title, but some of the less frequently accessed features are obfuscated a little bit through these links. So if I want to go and change the template, for example, which probably isn't something you do all that often, I'm thinking we can expose that in a modal. So we have more real estate here to create more elaborate interfaces for these more involved settings. Maybe we could do something similar for like scheduling as well. But I've tried a number of times to sort of fit this into the sidebar inspector and creating an interface which allows you to switch templates, maybe add a new template, go and edit a template. It's quite challenging to fit that into the sidebar. There's a number of other benefits as well. Just in terms of general information architecture, I feel like the inspector is kind of doing two similar but different things at the same time to its own detriment. Like even the idea of having post and block, post being the primary tab makes sense hierarchically, but I don't know about you all, but I find myself interacting with block settings way more often than this stuff. So there's like a bit of unpredictability there in terms of how this thing behaves. So moving the document attributes to their own home solves some of that, and also just reduces reliance on the inspector in general. Like anytime I'm able to do this and hide it, that feels good to me. I like the fact that this, I mentioned it before, it gives you more real estate to create these more elaborate interfaces, but also I think it would scale better as well. So if you think about complex plugins like WooCommerce, that has a lot of non-visual post data. So things like product SKUs, reviews, all kinds of stuff that you don't necessarily see on the screen or on the canvas, I should say. Giving those plugins like an area to put those things, I think makes a lot of sense. And then finally, just the general portability of it. So I think we've probably all seen the mosaic view of templates that has been worked on for the site editor. I think it's quite likely we'll have a mosaic view of content as well. So the idea of being able to access things like, or be able to change a post title or a post permalink or a template from like the list view, rather than having to actually open the whole post up in the editor. I think that's quite appealing as well, especially as that's kind of a feature of the current list view with the, you can quick edit a post to do these things. So that's something we're going to need to bring parity to in full site editing as well. So yeah, I think that's it. It's my fun little pet project that I've been working on.
Awesome. Thank you. Tammy,
Hey, Jay, can I ask?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I would just, I think you mentioned it. Is your like suggestion to actually take everything from the post tab in the sidebar and move it? So now there's no tabs anymore in the sidebar?
I guess on a vanilla installation, there would be no tabs. Yeah, it would just be the block inspector, and that's all it does.
All right.
It seems like you can do both. Basically, one can either open up the sidebar and just kind of show the alternatives as it is today, or we can do a new approach that kind of opens a bigger area to have it in.
I would be keen to not do both.
Yeah,
Personally.
I think if you had both, it would be like really overloading. I think if you're gonna go for it, do one. The only concern I have with this is that toolbar gets very busy if you load plugins. If you think about most plugins are loading lots of things. So you load template plugins or any different plugins, every single person is using that area. So I have concerns with using that. That's more, they haven't got a better place to go. I think there's also a learned behavior with the sidebar that this goes against. That's not to say that behavior can be learned again, but I'm not sure this solves it. And I wonder if this isn't brave enough, is my other thought, which it kind of goes against what I just said, which is it's still this tiny narrow modal. Like there's a whole screen. Like if you're gonna have a modal, why don't you try going big? And why don't you see like using more of the interface and different? Yeah.
Well,
I think if you're gonna experiment, really experiment is what
it's
I'm
easy to
saying.
make the modal bigger.
Yeah, I don't know. Like if you're going to break a mental model, really shatter a mental model, right?
Well, there is actually a pull request that Riyadh opened to have like a full screen modal, kind of like on, the Apple iOS, where you have the sheets. That
Yeah,
sort of,
which totally think if you're going to have screens like this for settings, you absolutely should do that for this, because you're entering into an experience. It doesn't make sense to just layer it. You don't need to see the stuff behind. It doesn't make any sense.
yeah.
I think
get on
from the
board with
beginning,
that.
you can just take the most popular and most used sections or something like that, and just kind of like duplicate somewhat, just try some of that or whatever works.
Yeah, or new things, right? So the post title input, you can't change that currently in the inspector, so it makes sense to put that in there, and then maybe the template stuff as well. We have a really basic interface for changing template stuff, but it's not very good. So that is another option. Yeah.
This could help a lot.
I wonder about the, sorry.
Sorry. I was just going to say quickly, I think this could help a lot with reusable blocks as well, because we've started to explore looking at adding some of that document type functionality that usually lives in the document tab on the block tab, but eventually we're going to want to add block settings there, like probably like background color and stuff. It would be really nice if they weren't like intermixed, but it's just the reusable block is a weird situation because it's, you know, not often that you're going to view it as a document. You're most likely going to interact with it as a block. So it would be nice for those options to be easily accessible somewhere.
Yeah, and the same for template parts as well, I think.
I wonder about the word more as well. I don't know. That word more just feels weird to me. I don't know whether it feels weird because I've got used to the dots and I'm trained to just see dots and think more, which is equally not good. But I just, yeah, I wonder about translation. As soon as you start translating with all the icons that someone puts, like install a couple of like libraries and different things that people have that go the bolt-ons for the editor into this interface, and then try and use this, and it's going to be a lot suddenly. Yeah.
I mean, maybe we don't even need this label if you don't have any plugins active, but it's easy to imagine, oh, I don't know what the label would be, but maybe when you do have plugins, maybe you have WooCommerce, maybe there is like a section. So you have WooCommerce and then you have price related products and all of these other sort of data intensive.
Maybe that only shows when you're in the big screen, because otherwise you're going to have like a scroll fest here. Like you could easily have like 3 plugins and like this is a giant list, right?
Yeah, I need to install some more plugins.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's always the challenge with WordPress, right? Accounting for all the extensibility and third-party plugins and stuff. Yeah.
I wonder here, Jay, is we're starting to bring modals more and more. I'm starting to see them as solutions for design problems. And so anything we can do there to kind of unify or create some sort of consistency would be helpful. I think a good starting point to look at is the preferences. That whole screen was just updated. We're looking at now bringing the block manager into that as well. Yeah, this screen here. And so what I'm wondering is maybe there's a screen here that's document settings, right? And so that drop down that you had at the top, it exposes a couple settings. Title makes a lot of sense, maybe template, but then there's an option for document settings, and that opens up a modal. And that's where you have featured image, excerpt, discussion, what have you. And then if we think about plugins extending that, they're not adding 100 things to that list. They're adding just their plugins preferences to that list, if that makes sense. Yeah. Basically combining some of this stuff into a single modal rather than having everything listed out separately.
Yep, I think that makes a lot of sense.
It might even be interesting to think about skipping the popover menu.
Yeah.
Because it is a weird kind of, it's not a menu, it's a menu with form fields, which is like its own accessibility thing too. And so maybe this just opens a modal.
Yeah, I was just thinking the same thing. The only, I suppose, trade-off there is you have to figure out where to potentially place like actions that aren't really settings, but they kind of fit in here based on what we've done in the site editor. But that's something we can always change. But yeah, going straight to the modal does make a lot of sense, I think.
It might. There is something to be said for having this first layer of organization, and that it does kind of group things. That makes it easier to find, maybe. Especially if you think about, you have this, oh, here, you have a modal that does this already, yeah. But if you had a template modal, like you're using like that waterfall nav thing on the side, which I think is going to be weird within a modal too. And so when you start to combine like things into one modal, like does then template need to have its own modal because it has its own sidebar and filters? If we think about like patterns might have their own search and their own categorization, you know, it gets really complicated really quick, I think. So I think there's some more exploring to do around like, when do we pop the modal, or when do we present some sort of higher level navigation?
Yeah,
I don't know
I hear
if
you.
that helps, but
Yeah, we don't want to have modals within modals within
Exactly.
modals. But that is actually a nice feature of the full screen modal component we mentioned before. Like, it kind of feels natural, like anyone who has an Apple handheld device, when you go through those different levels. I mean, they are essentially modals, but they don't feel like modals.
I'm not
I'm
convinced.
saying the word modal a lot.
I think it's based on a small viewport, but once
Yeah.
you get, there's a reason you have this modal at a fixed width here. Like, you didn't make it full screen because it would get, if you only had 2 templates, it would just be a giant white screen. If you're looking at something like the block manager, where it's just a list of block names with check marks, like how do you put that on the full screen and not have it feel just cavernous and empty and completely separated from everything else?
It's kind of what I ran into with this one.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyways, I think that's a different discussion.
Yeah. Cool. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, James. I think it's quite interesting to identify how hybrid is hybrid enough at times when you're working with design. A lot of the things that come up, tiny things that make a big change and big impression as well. So I just want to remind everyone, which I should have done in the beginning, it's a family-friendly meeting, and we're recording the Zoom discussion so that we can share it later on for people who couldn't make it to this discussion today. So I'll pass the floor to Paul, and then we'll pass it to Channing as well. Paul, all yours.
Okay, now you can hear me. I'll just start sharing my screen here. Okay, can you see my screen?
No, actually, I can't.
How about,
There we go.
Okay. I just want to do a little bit quick run through of some of the reusable blocks as we've been seeing it. So here's this earlier version from 5.6. And in regards to just kind of creating a reusable blocks, one can just click into it. And let's see where I am right now. Let's see, I'll just create a reusable block. One renames it right here. Let's see, I think I got the plugin deactivated. Okay, so block name. One has obvious converted and regular blocks right here. It is a contained environment. So going into 5.7, Gutenberg plugin and the adding reusable blocks. And here it just is different. And one clicks it and one is not able to do anything here. In the sidebar, we have the rename area. To convert is not obvious because I heard some complaints about that. And it's a difficult part with saving here. If one makes a mistake, it's hard to discard it. So doing with the when this is the Gutenberg plugin is activated, I'm kind of zipping through this right now, this part. The modal comes up, and this is not part of 5.7. So this makes it a lot easier just naming a block. But clicking the name here has another effect than earlier. So it's not obvious where we can convert it. We have this convert to regular blocks. I'm thinking about adding another area in here, text link saying convert to regular blocks. That would help a little bit. And we're talking about discarding and save of the block. Here's difficult. One clicks into it, and it's easy to make a mistake and end up getting a dot up here and having to save. Okay, so just going on to how Learn uses reusable blocks today. So for instance, here's the Learn in the back end. Here I've added the reusable block lesson template right here. I actually started to make some changes, and I said, whoops, I don't want to save it, overwrite anything else. I don't want to overwrite the existing reusable block. I better not save the page and just refresh the page so I get it back fresh again. To make sure I don't say overwrite the existing reusable block. So that made me think about actually having an option to choose some blocks and save it as a pattern. So we can just add a pattern that's independent of each other, and that one just adds a pattern straight into as a template and just starts filling it in. That would make it a lot easier than adding a reusable block and start filling it in and just noticing one makes a mistake. So here, so there are a few different things. We need to basically discard a save. And James has, and Janny is kind of touching, adding a save button to the toolbar of a reusable block. So we can save it there. She also, I'm just going to bring up, well, I'll get back to it. We have an issue for that where she has added some various modifications for saving and discard, and also revisions, because it's hard to undo when making a change to a reusable block. So there's various modifications that we should get into 5.8, and that is basically the click-through approach. I'm just going to bring up some notes here. Okay, we have an issue for that, where one just kind of selects the reusable block as a lid on top of the box. One selects the lid, and then the first click selects the lid, the second click clicks inside of it. So that's actually very important to PR to get in, and Addison is working on that. I would say the next step is just getting a discard and save it, making that a little easier for actually everything, and also reusable blocks. So that was kind of like my zippy, I would say, called presentation for that.
So that was a lot. So the two things you're proposing on top of that, just to recap, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm trying to get them out, was to convert a group of reusable blocks into a pattern, and to add a link into the toolbar, into the menu. Are those the two things you're proposing?
The most important for 5.8 is the click-through. So when it selects a reusable block, it doesn't click into it. Because there's been a few track tickets where people click into it and they screw it up. They have to save it.
Right, but you were also proposing to design things, right? You were aside from the click-through.
Okay, aside from that, I'm proposing, I'll add an issue for that. Is actually same as today. We can choose blocks and choose it and save it as a reusable block. That we should be able to save it as a pattern in the same way.
Cool. Yeah. And the other one was that you added a link that said, you said something in the menu. I'm going to write down what you said. Is that?
Yeah. It was a zippy. It went like this. So it's kind of like, so what I'm proposing there is actually changing the icon, because we have kind of like a duplicate icon there. It doesn't work for converting. So we should change that to another icon. It will make it more obvious. and also adding convert to regular blocks in the more or the 3-dot drop down area. Because
So the
when
problem
people
with that,
overlook,
I think is you're hiding it. I think anything in a menu, in the menu, is just hidden. So I think the convert to a pattern, super useful. Patterns are probably more useful than reusable blocks going forward to people. They're probably going to be better. I just think anytime someone's got to hunt in a menu to be able to do something, I think it needs exposing. So I would probably encourage, like, how can you expose it in the interface more than hide it in the menu, would be my only kind of note on that one. But I've done a lot of talking, and I'm sure other people want to.
yeah, because I'm thinking of just changing that icon, because the icon exists today. So what is the easiest approach there? Easiest approach would just find a better icon. But and if you're not able to see that icon, or overlook it, just having it in a drop down, a 3-dot drop down menu. So you have both places. It'll make it a little bit easier. So, yeah. Yeah, so we'll just move on. I think there's a lot going on tonight, so yeah.
Okay.
All right, I think we can go to Channing. Yeah, floor is yours.
Great. I'm going to drop a couple of links in the chat here. Maybe not. The first one is a GitHub issue, and the second one is a Figma file. And then share my screen. I just wanted to start with the GitHub issue really quickly. And thank you. Several of you have commented in here, so I appreciate all the feedback so far. This is an idea that has to do with the experiment screen in the Gutenberg plugin, which kind of feels like a missed opportunity because there's not a lot happening there. This is what the screen looks like currently. So currently you can opt into the navigation screen experiment and opt into the widget experiment in the customizer. Also looking at updating this so you can turn on and off the block-based widget screens in both the customizer and the standalone screen. But still, it's kind of like, what is this stuff? Why should I test it? It kind of feels like there's a lot of questions left unanswered around this. And we had been having a discussion in the design channel about, like, how can we make easier pathways for contributors, especially first-time contributors who aren't really sure where to get started. And one thing I've noticed with the full site editor outreach program that Ann McCarthy's been running is that, like, that has gotten a lot of new people into contributing just because they have, like, really clear action items to go test something, and then it becomes like your pathway into contributing to WordPress. Then you might learn about making a GitHub issue and just turn it into like a reoccurring thing. So the general starting place was like, oh, maybe this could be a page that has a name. Like I originally said maybe it could be called Gutenberg Labs, but that's totally open for discussion. Maybe it's more like Gutenberg Beta, or maybe it's still experiments. But I think the important thing is kind of like branding it and having it be a name that can be referred to externally, and that we can kind of drive people here to be a home for beta testing. Let me jump over to the Figma file really quick. Sorry, I don't see Figma as an option to share that alone.
I don't actually see Figma. I see your desktop.
Okay. Sorry, I was trying to share just the Figma screen. Is anyone in Figma? Can we just follow me?
Yeah, I can try.
Oh yeah, do you want to try, Javi?
Yeah. Can you see the?
Perfect.
Yes.
Okay.
Awesome. And I'll go in. Javi, if you just want to follow me real quick, and then I'll switch to you. Okay, cool. Okay, so just to jump in this doc really quick, Javi and I have been collecting just some really early ideas about where this might go. Obviously, none of this is set in stone because this project is kind of like a blue sky project, but we would love to get some feedback on like what people are thinking in just like the early days of it. So this is the existing screen. One thing we were referencing was the about page in WordPress, which is like more of a landing page. So I think we could copy, like, you know, for example, the column width of this like more like landing page. And, you know, it wouldn't be that much of an outlier since you're already seeing this elsewhere. We also started collecting some references of other people who do similar experiments. Javi found this really nice one from GitHub, which I think is actually really close to what we would like to do, where this one has like a modal and it has different experiments here, and each one has like an image and you can enable or disable it. And we're just kind of cataloging what each one has. Gmail Labs, I used to be a big fan of Gmail Labs. It's like not really a thing anymore. Now they have it under the advanced tab. But this is where stuff used to be like when they were testing that undo feature, for example. It started out in Gmail Labs. Figma, I just thought they were a nice like visual reference. They have an entirely separate desktop app, but I like how the logo is inverted and sort of like a wireframe version of the logo. And then of course they have like more fun, like branding type of stuff that happens. Tumblr Labs, this is super cool. This is one Javi found. I really like this look. But this also is really close to what we're talking about doing with, it has individual experiments listed out with an image, a description, and you can toggle into each one separately. This stuff, I'll just run through really quick because I'm not sure if this is needed or if this is like an extra component on top of, you know, just what we want to put on the screen. But it does feel like there's an opportunity to brand this and have it be like kind of an offshoot of the Gutenberg brand. So this is just some fun like visual reference of like, it could be something to do with like shapes and work in progress, and it's all kind of just like messy. I like these abstract L's here. Another interesting direction could be some sort of like abstracted UI and like just playing off of tools. Like I could see an abstract version of our block toolbar or something like that. And then a last direction that's kind of not really fleshed out is just like the idea of it being like a demo or a sandbox where maybe you can kind of like exaggerate the features that you're calling attention to, or stylize the interface in such a way that calls attention to what you would like to call out. Lastly, I'm gonna pass this over to Javi to go through this screen. I'll just say quickly that these are some exploratory layouts, but like I said, like these are all like super early days. This is all meant to be very wireframey, but we started using some color just to kind of like break out of like this looking like this screen that it is currently, if that makes sense. So everything is just early ideas here, and would love to hear if other people have other directions that maybe we haven't started to look into yet. And I will pass this over to Javi to go through the rest of this screen.
Yeah, so basically we have tried like, I think 3 kinds of layouts. This is the first one. They all share similar ideas, but basically what we have here is you know, a little intro that tries to explain what this page is about. We have the branding on top, and then in this layout, we have this toggle that it could work like in the Tumblr example, that if you toggle this, you click this toggle, then you enable you can basically access to all the experiments, right? And if you disable the toggle, then everything is disabled. And then for each of the experiments, you have an image here. I will show you some examples in a minute. A description of what's going to happen or the important thing about the experiment. And in this case, for instance, this is a more complex experiment, so you have the option to opt in to several sub-experiments. And this one could be, you know, a navigation experiment with just one toggle. But maybe, as you're going to see in a minute, it could be just that you enable one thing, and you know, and it's that. Another important thing here is that we, as in the GitHub feature page, we also ask users to get feedback, right? To give us feedback. And I think that's one very important detail, right? Like we have to, we let people play with experiments, and we ask them if they want to, you know, participate and give them their opinion. And this is, I think, it is a nice way to create or make the community stronger, right? This is a different layout, and the idea here is that instead of having to scroll down through a list of experiments, the experiment is fixed, and you can using this navigation, you can switch the experiment, so you have more focus on each of the experiments. But the idea is similar. We have the same elements. We also try dark mode. And then we have this this kind of layout using cards. I'm going to show you instead of the wireframe this version that with some more details. Sorry about the noise. They're coming from me. So okay. So after we finish the wireframes, we start adding more details. And I think another important feature of this whole section is just try to make people excited about new experiments, right? So I think that's super important. So one of the ways to do that is having nice previews, and I think that we could work in these previews, like making something special and unique, not just a screen, you know, like full screen screenshot of the experiment. Something, you know, nice and simple. Maybe we could also have animated GIFs, you know, just showing the important things of the experiment. And another variation we introduced this experiment. This street is very noisy. We have this toggle here, and in the same way we have the general toggle. If you click here, you're gonna enable this experiment, and then you have the options to refine the experiment with more with sub experiments or extra configuration, right?
We got less than a minute, just so you know.
Oh, sorry. Okay, I'm gonna go super fast. We have another layout, basically focusing more in each card. And then another interesting feature is that if you disable the experiment, as this GitHub does that, when you disable the experiment, you get a message saying, "Hey, thank you for participating. Why don't you take this survey and answer some questions?" And finally, we thought about making, you know, this thing very playful and exciting. So we thought we could have a nice header with the, you know, the branding for this section. It could be a logo, it could be a big title, but we also thought that we could, you know, like maybe commission or ask illustrators to contribute, you know, to some art to feature here, you know, like, and the idea is basically to make this page friendly, accessible, and also exciting. Yeah. Okay, I think that's all from me.
Okay,
Right,
that was a
thank
lot of ideas really quick, but we'll add the Figma on the GitHub issue and appreciate any comments.
Yeah,
This
I
is
think
so
we
cool.
have